Welcome to the evening news. I'm Edward Hinckelhoff.
That's the best name you can come up with?
Shut up! Anyway, our meteorologist called off, so we have a Game Freak developer that will give us today's weather. Thanks, Ed. Well, you know, it's going to be real icy out there. It's going to be real slippery when you go outside. Kind of like the Genesis games I programmed. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Poger coming at you with another video. You know, I've been thinking, I've never talked about Pokemon on my channel ever. That's really strange because I'm actually a really big Pokemon fan. When I was a kid, I saw Pokemon the first movie in theaters, and I also saw Pokemon 2000. I also have a huge collection of Pokemon cards, and I personally grinded hours of Pokemon Blue. I'm also pretty knowledgeable when it comes to competitive Pokemon. I used to watch a lot of YouTubers, Shady Penguin, A-Drive, Pokeaim. I used to be a really big fan of that scene. With that said, I was not a big fan of Pokemon Sword and Shield. That game caused a lot of competitive YouTubers to actually quit the game. So when you hear the company Game Freak, automatically you're probably thinking of Pokemon. I mean, what else did Game Freak do? Well, actually, Game Freak is an independent company. They actually had their own projects before they started a partnership with Nintendo. But not just any projects, they actually made games for the Sega Genesis. Isn't that crazy? Not only that, but one game specifically has a lot of references and names that would later be shown in the Pokemon games. That's even more crazy, that Pokemon almost derives from a Sega Genesis game. So I thought it'd be cool to check out these games. Let's get started. So who is Game Freak? They're best known for the Pokemon series. To give an idea of how successful Pokemon is, let's take a look at the sales. The best-selling Game Boy game? Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow. The best-selling Game Boy Advance game? Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire. Pokemon is a joint effort between Game Freak and Nintendo. In fact, Game Freak and Nintendo have collaborated together many times. Of the 37 games developed by Game Freak, 24 of them were published by Nintendo. Game Freak's first ever game was Mendel Palace, made in 1989. Definitely an underrated puzzle game. You play as Bonbon, who's out to save Princess Candy from... Is that Brock? No, there's no way. In this game, your attack is flipping over tiles. In order to beat the level, you have to defeat all the enemies on screen by knocking them into a wall. Some of the tiles have extra abilities depending on the icon. For example, the sun icon will rotate every tile on the board, which will eliminate all enemies on screen. Sometimes you might find a hidden tile that contains a power-up. The game will introduce new mechanics to spice up the gameplay. For example, when you make it to World 2, the enemies can now jump. This makes them immune to attacks if they're not on the ground. There's also some solid blocks in this world which can sometimes trap you. The music is really catchy. And I like the victory sound when you complete a stage. You only spend 1 or 2 minutes on each stage, so they kept the victory music very short so it doesn't get annoying. So overall, this is a fantastic game. I wasn't planning on covering this one, but when I started playing it, I just couldn't put it down. Before doing research for this video, I thought Game Freak was a subsidiary of Nintendo, but they're actually an independent company, and they even have developed games for Nintendo's competitors. Can you imagine that? One of Nintendo's best-selling franchises was made by a company that developed Sega Genesis games. That's right, Game Freak made a couple Genesis games. I thought it'd be cool to take a look at them. The first one they made was Magical Taruruuto Kun. It's based on an anime TV show that I'm not familiar with. It's a cute little platformer. Your basic attack is kinda wimpy, but thankfully you can interact with the stage background and grab items that you can throw at enemies. You have this gliding ability that not only allows you to stay in the air longer, but it enables you to fit under areas of low clearance. You can actually move pretty quick, and similar to Sonic, it's a lot of fun to speed through the stages. There's a lot of creativity here. For example, the first stage boss chucks soccer balls at you, and you're able to throw them back at him. In the third stage, there's an auto-scroller where you jump across clouds, and there's monkeys and giraffes that get in your way. I admire the creativity here. There's a couple tiny issues. The controls are very slippery, and this is especially noticeable in stages where there's tons of small platforms and bottomless pits. The ability to go fast is very fun, but I rarely take advantage of it because I usually end up dying. The slipperiness might be the way the game was intended to be, but to me, it feels more like a flaw than a feature. With that said, this is a great game. There's not really much to it, it's just a basic platformer, but I like that. Unfortunately, this game was only released in Japan. I can see why, it's based on a Japanese-only anime, but I think Game Freak could have swapped the sprites with a different character and released it under a different name. If we can get Contra Force, I don't see why we couldn't have gotten this. In December of 1994, the Sega Channel was launched. It was an online game service that allowed subscribers to access Genesis games online and get cheat codes for games and also play demos of upcoming games. It was a separate peripheral that went in the cartridge slot of the Genesis. The device required its own power cord and connected to the internet using a coaxial cable input. The whole point of the Sega Channel was to allow subscribers to test a game out before buying it, and if they liked it, they could buy a physical copy of the game. To play a game, you had to download it first. The product was advertised to take 60 seconds to download a game in full, but due to coaxial cables being prone to interference, sometimes downloads would take longer. The service was primitive when you compare it to today's standards, but it was actually impressive for its time. The reason I mention all of this is because subscribers had access to a few Japanese exclusive games that were never released in the US. One of those games was Pulseman, which was Game Freak's second Genesis game. If you lived in the US, the Sega Channel was the only way you could play this game. The game was designed by Ken Sugimori and Satoshi Tajiri, both of which are the creators of the Pokemon franchise. In fact, most of the developers of Pulseman would eventually go on to work on the Pokemon series. You could almost look at this as a precursor to Pokemon, and it's on the Sega Genesis. Isn't that strange? It doesn't end there either. We're going to talk about some interesting crossovers this game has with Pokemon. So the plot is really weird. Doc Yoshiyama created his own computer world, but he fell in love with it, so he uploaded himself into his own computer system and gave birth to Pulseman, who is half computer, half human. Okay, that's kinda disturbing. Anyway, Yoshiyama becomes evil and wants his computer worlds to take over the human world, so Pulseman has to stop his father from doing so. As Pulseman, your main ability is to become a pong ball that can bounce off the screen temporarily, referred to as Volsecker. If there's walls close by, you can continue bouncing off the walls for longer durations. It's your main way of accessing hard-to-reach areas. It's actually a really cool idea. You can also attack enemies and bosses this way. However, you have to be fully charged to utilize Volsecker. You can charge it easily by performing a quick dash. If you try to use Volsecker without being charged, Pulseman will spark for a second but nothing will happen. This might seem useless, but the basic spark is actually super effective against bosses and it grants you temporary immunity, so even without charge, there are still uses for it. Some stages have strings you can attach to, and it transports you to a different location. There's also green electrical balls that you can rotate around and blocks you can break when you use Volsecker. I think it's cool that the game allows you to interact with the stages like this. The game introduces some pretty cool obstacles here and there. For example, Stage 6 introduces water. Pulseman can't use any of his abilities while underwater, so you're forced to beat the stage without them. When you complete a stage, you're brought to a bonus level where you can play a game of Breakout. If you break all the pieces within the time limit, you get a perfect bonus. They didn't have to do this, but the extra content is really appreciated. This game features a lot of digitized voices. It's not the best clarity I've heard on the Genesis, but there's a lot of it. Pretty much every interaction has a voice.
Stage 2. Be careful! Great job! Stage clear. Bonus perfect!
Pulseman!
One up!
Water can destroy Pulseman!
Here I am!
In fact, every cutscene has dialogue.
Due to the efforts of Pulseman, the case was completely solved.
Considering this is a game for the Genesis, not the PS1, that's very impressive, honestly. The graphics are fantastic, there's a lot of color, and some of the parallax scrolling looks super nice. Around the end of Stage 2, there's a scene where the background moves in the opposite direction of your character, and it's a pretty neat effect. It looks like you're inside of a dome or tower. I also really gotta compliment the music here. Some scenes, even though you're only in it for a few minutes, got their own track. Very rarely did I hear a track get reused in this game. Some of the stages really capture the mood so well. Now this game is not without its flaws. The controls are still very slippery, just like in Magical Taruruuto-kun. There are also a lot of bottomless pits and small platforms in this game, so it's easy to slip off and die. Just like with the other game, it feels more like a flaw than an intentional mechanic. The graphics, while I do think they're great, Game Freak went with some strange color choices in some stages. Sometimes it's hard to see where you're going because the platforms might blend in with the background. With that said though, the good definitely outweighs the bad here. So the bosses I think are really creative. The first stage boss is a wireframe hand that will break through blocks. Pretty cool. In the underwater stage, Pulseman doesn't have his abilities, so when you fight the boss, all you can do is redirect the torpedoes in the other direction and hope it hits. Definitely a nice little change in gameplay. Speaking of creativity, I like the stage where you can go inside the arcade machine and play the game. It's a nice way to change up the gameplay, and I liked the pixelated graphics. You might notice at the bottom where it says presented by Galaxy Gang. I mention this because in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, your main antagonist is Team Galactic, which in Japan is called Galaxy Gang. Pretty interesting reference here. While we're on the topic, there are quite a few enemies that resemble Pokemon that would later be introduced in the series. For example, the birds in Stage 2 look like Xatu. The gunfish enemy in Stage 6 looks like Remoraid. The Stage 4 boss sorta looks like Registeel. Pulseman himself kinda looks like Ledian, and some speculate that Rotom might be based off Pulseman. His signature ability, Volsecker, is actually the Japanese name for the move Volt Tackle, which is the signature move of Pikachu. The computer world that Pulseman was created in is called St. Anne. Remember in Pokemon Red and Blue when you board the SS Anne? It just so happens, in Japan, the ship was called St. Anne. It blows my mind that one of Nintendo's most successful franchises has references that come from a game on the Sega Genesis. Can you imagine that? But it's not just any Genesis game. It's an outstanding one. Your main ability is simple, but you can do all kinds of creative things with it. The graphics are nice and colorful, the digitized voices are ambitious, the bonus stages are nice. Game Freak definitely went the extra mile with this one. While Pulseman was released in the US, it was a digital-only release on the Sega Channel. Once Sega Channel ended in 1998, so did the ability to play the game. After that, outside of emulation or importing, there was no way for the US audience to play this game. That is, until 2009 when the game was re-released on Wii Virtual Console. This was some really exciting news. Quite a few games that were previously not released or had a limited release were finally given a chance in the spotlight thanks to Virtual Console, and Pulseman was one of them. This was actually the first Virtual Console game I ever purchased for the Wii, and had it not been for this re-release, I probably would have never played this game. So you would think that since Game Freak and Nintendo have a partnership, they wouldn't acknowledge any of their work on the Sega Genesis, but no. In 2010, Ken Sugimori drew this picture. It shows Pulseman, Pikachu, and Quinty, who is a character from Mendel Palace. I'm surprised to see this, but I'm also pleased that the original games are not being forgotten. We all know Game Freak for the Pokemon series, but it's interesting that they developed games independently. Mendel Palace was their first game and it's fantastic. It's even more surprising that they developed games for the Sega Genesis, which was Nintendo's biggest competitor at the time. The development team behind Pulseman would later create the Pokemon series, and you can definitely tell with some of the references in this game. So thanks so much for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like rating. That alone helps the video get noticed by more people. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you're automatically updated when my next video is out. More content is coming. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers. Thanks so much to all my friends and fans for making this possible. Let's aim for 10K. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Poger coming at you with another video. When I was... No, I'm not gonna say that because I don't remember my exact age. I'm also pretty... Nope. That's like the one... Nope, I'm not gonna finish that sentence. And they've actually done projects before they have that partner. They actually had their own projects before... Nope. They actually had their own projects before starting a partnership with Nintendo. Nope. Not only that, but one of their games specifically has a ton of references in the gameplay that... Not only that, but one specific game has a lot of references, names. Anyway, our Game Freak... No. Anyway, our lead... Sorry. Anyway, our meteorologist called off, so I... well, no, that sounded really dumb. Well, you know, I mean, well, you know, it's gonna be really icy. No, I ain't doing that one. Well, it's looking pretty icy out there, you know what I mean? I mean, it's gonna be real icy. No, this isn't working.